back live again. Monday, start of a new week. It is the 24th of July. Um, I've basically given up trying to get that camera in position when it says it's going to take a screenshot because it takes a shot of the top of my head. I've yet to actually get my photo taken correctly for what they're saying they're going to do. So I just get out of the way. I scoot all the way over. You get a shot of some of my books. I think there might be an odd trophy and race bib up there. Stuff. It's all just stuff. Even the books. And I love books, but it's still just stuff. It's the essence that's contained within the book that makes a difference in our lives. And of course, you got to crack the book open to get to that essence. So anyway, Lewis, how are you? I just watched your session not too long ago. Crazy psycho style burpees. I got Duncan Walsh's his leg workout queued up, which is pretty explosive as well. I think if I combine your psycho burpees and Duncan's leg workout, I would literally be sore for a month. Easily. Sorry, I got my cat here. One of my cats keeping me company. 2 rescue cats we've had for about a year now. They were sisters, 10 years old, black cats. Nobody wanted them. They were afraid that if somebody did adopt them, they'd just get one. They'd been together, sisters, for 10 years. So when I heard that story, I had no choice but to actually adopt them, even though I was not in the market emotionally for a cat or a dog. Would love to have another dog, but after losing my last 2, and then lost my father, and just emotionally I didn't feel ready. Although, if one came along, needed to be adopted, I would not close my door. Lewis, have you seen Duncan's 14-minute leg workout? It's all explosive moves. His jump burpees aren't just a jump. He's got the feet to the ass, jump in the air. He's got jump lunges. He has jump squats, and he has star jumps. Just all the way through. 2 rounds of those for time. Like I said, 14 minutes. Definitely check it out. And if you do it, let me know. Let me know what you think. I think largely my explosive movements are limited right now. Just reoccurring hamstring and reoccurring groin issue would keep me from doing too much at once. So knowing that, I like to fit them in where I can. And I don't want to do anything on minimizing the burpees that I do. So that would keep me from doing the entire Duncan workout. Although, you never know. You know, sometimes you get that wild hair, and you got to give it a shot, regardless of what's going to happen. I've done races totally ill-prepared, as much as I'm ever ill-prepared. I like thinking that I'm in shape for just about anything that comes my way. Like even now, not doing any serious running, I feel like if I had to, I could get out and do a 50K. Not fast, but I could finish it, and probably within the time frame, which is normally you get 8 hours, 9 hours for 50K. Of course, it depends on how much climbing as well. And I do believe a lot of that is burpees, much like kettlebell lifting, keep you in shape for whatever comes along. When I started doing ultra running, I only ran about 20 minutes a day, 6 days a week. One day I would go out a little bit longer for like half hour, maybe a 40-minute run. Nothing intense, nothing big. It was what my kettlebell coach called a lung massage, meaning that you're just kind of gently getting some cardio after your main workout. But the kettlebell training itself was so intense, endurance, cardio, and power wise, that um, from I guess 2 months worth of training, maybe 3 months worth of training for my first 50K, um, I ended up finishing and doing it in a very good time. I did it in under 6 hours on a tough course. Not because I'm any kind of super athlete, but that style of training, combining power and endurance um, and strength all in one shot, power endurance, strength endurance, gets you ready for almost anything. Um, Case in point, it's what Art Iron Wolf does with his troops, having them ready and himself ready for whatever comes away. And for them, whatever comes their way is going to be some heavy shit, no doubt about it. Um, Kettlebells, burpees, running, all body weight stuff. Well, with the exception of kettlebells. He doesn't do any, doesn't bench. Maybe he does in odd times, but doesn't hit the squat rack, doesn't do curls, but he's ready for it all. Same with the people that he trained. And that's what I felt my kettlebell training did. And also, I think it's what burpees do. I could be stronger if I devoted myself to, 3-4 months of a power program. I could have better endurance if I devoted myself to ultra running again. It could be bigger if I did some bodybuilding stuff. But I wouldn't be where I am now, which means that I can go in almost any direction with the base that I have. So I'm constantly and consistently working on that base, my floor of fitness, which means that, and I love that expression, the floor of fitness. If I need to extend the ceiling, I can do that with something specific. But having that floor, always ready. Lewis, I look at your workouts and you see the same thing. You're ready. You're ready for the shit, man. When it hits the fan, if it hits the fan, when it hits the fan, you're good to go. And by go, I mean like instantly. Reading your comment, last year, because I had a half marathon to run, I burnt myself out because I lifted, then burpees, and then ran 5 to 7 miles. It was exhausting. I bet. I did something similar with my kettlebell lifting training for my first ultra running, and then 90 minutes of Bikram yoga, which is in the 108, I think it's 108 degree temperature, once or twice a day. And that was just, I was already in my 40s at the time. But you get through it. It's not something I think you should be doing all the time, but it's, it's a practice for a short period of time. Gets you ready, got you ready for the half marathon. But for daily, definitely ready for the shit. Hopefully I am too. I tried physically, mentally, and who knows what even, the shit's going to be. But for me, when I think about it, if I got a neighbor in a snowstorm that needs to be shoveled out, needs a car pushed, if I see an elderly lady who needs her groceries carried, if, someone needs their dog walked, if someone needs to be defended, if whatever, I don't know. I want to be ready for life because, as I talk about all the time, I'm a participant in life, and that means I don't get to pick and choose. That means I'm immersed. Thanks, Lewis. I believe you are as well, actually. Some things you can just tell, if something needed to be done, you're the person to do it. Like I said, you just, you get the vibe. But, to me, being ready, being prepared, being the ultimate Boy Scout, you're ready for it all. Um, let's call it, you know, you're the Swiss Army knife of knives. I could be sharper. I could be pointier. Uh, you know, I could maybe, whatever, not being a knife expert. But you take out that Swiss Army knife and, you got scissors, you got a corkscrew, you got, several blades to choose from, you got tweezers. You're getting shit done with a Swiss Army knife that you're not going to get done with a Bowie knife. Now, in a specific situation, that Bowie knife is pretty damn good to have around. But day in, day out, you want that Swiss Army knife, man. You want to be able to get all the shit done, all of it. You don't get to always pick and choose. And what's the old saying that you, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But if you got a Swiss Army knife, you're looking for possibilities. How can I help? How can I serve? If anyone needs a life mantra, there it is. How can I serve? Not what's in it for me. What do I get out of this? I'm protecting me and protecting myself and protecting my family. How can I serve? How may I serve? Think that several times a day, and you'll see opportunities. You'll see opportunities every single day. And you know what? It's all exclusive. You don't say, how may I serve? And then see an opportunity and then say, I can't serve them. It's a Democrat. That's a Republican. They're this, they're that. You're making distinctions in how you want to serve, not how you may serve. When it comes to service, true service, deep service, being there for others, being there for your own truest, deepest self. Who did Jesus preach to? The least among us. He didn't pick and choose. He didn't go to elites, whatever they are, whatever they were doing at the time. He didn't even go specifically to anyone. He went where he was needed, where he was guided to go, and his service was love. That's what he put out there. That's what he taught. Same with the Buddha. Buddha was born a Siddhartha, the prince. He could have stayed a prince. His entire life, early life, his family devoted their time and effort to keep him away from suffering. When he was born, it was prophesied that he would either be a great, great king or a great, great spiritual leader. And of course, his father, being a king, wanted him to follow in his footsteps. So he saw that the best way to do that was to keep him from experiencing any kind of sorrow, any kind of suffering. Keep him sheltered, away from people. But one day he snuck out and he witnessed somebody dying. He witnessed somebody diseased. He witnessed somebody poor, begging. He saw suffering for the first time, and he was so moved that he had to discover the nature of suffering. Not just the nature of suffering. How do we not avoid it, but how do we escape it? How do we get off that wheel? In Sanskrit, it's called the wheel of samsara. How do we get off of that wheel of suffering, of rebirth over and over again? And when the Buddhists say rebirth, they're not necessarily talking about reincarnation. We are reborn in each and every moment, but because of our mental conditioning, we're reborn in that same situation over and over and over again. How do we escape that? How do we escape suffering? Got to ask the Buddha. His answer? He had an 8-fold path. How to avoid suffering. I don't know if you need an 8-fold path. I don't even know if you need to avoid suffering is not the right expression anyway. We're not going to, because we're alive. And life holds no small degree of suffering. We're constantly getting older. From the moment we're born, we are that much closer to death, whatever that might be. 80 years. We might live 80 years. That 80 years is going to have all kinds, what Lewis and I were talking about. It's going to have all kinds of shit. All kinds of shit are going to happen to you from day one. You're going to get sick. People are going to leave you. People are going to treat you like crap. You'll lose your loved ones, get fired from jobs. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? We know something's going to happen. If if you've lived a life where you've experienced no grief, no sorrow, you are someone that I've never met. Of course, some people, life seems a little more charmed for some, so maybe they've escaped it to a large degree, but something will happen. It always does. You can't be alive. You can't be that deep participant in life and escape sorrow and suffering and grief. Not even the Buddha's family, richest family in the kingdom. They were the kingdom. They were king and queens. Not even they could keep him away from experiencing all of that. And once he did, his entire life was devoted to how do we escape. The Eightfold Path is a beautiful path. I'm not a Buddhist. I've studied Buddhism. I've practiced Buddhist meditation. I continuously read Buddhist thought, fascinated by it, fascinated by Zen. All of it's been helpful. But I don't necessarily know if you need that Eightfold Path. Some do, which is awesome. Good for them. For me, meditation, which is part of the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, kindness, which you could put down to right living, which is another Eightfold Path. But the practice of yoga. And when I say the practice of yoga, really I mean just that. Yoga is a practice. You don't get good at it because you are it. Yoga. Yoga, the word means union. Everyday life and the divine come together. The realization is it's one and the same thing, not separate. So by practicing yoga, we become more of what we are. Or maybe a better way of looking at it, we become less of what we think we are. And we reveal ourselves. As I love to mention, David in the stone. We are revealed to be David in every moment. We are the essence of the stone. Yoga takes away everything we're not. Buddhism takes away everything we're not. Christianity, when practiced, not when it's talked about, not by going to church, but by doing the deeds, being of service, being the light that Jesus talks about. I put the Beatitudes, Sermon of the Mount, right up there with the Eightfold Path, right up there with the way of yoga, because it tells you explicitly, do this. One of the reasons why I liked Pavel's simple and sinister plan for a long, long time, which is 5 get-ups, Turkish get-ups each side, the heavy kettlebell that you can do, 100 swings, 10 one-arm swings each arm, 100 reps. He tries to tell you to do it in under 10 minutes. One of the reasons why I like that was because he says, do this. 2 things, nice and simple. So, more so, do yoga. Yoga includes meditation, it includes being kind, it includes exercise, the right posture. The path for me is a path of yoga. I wrote about this morning, that right now my life seems drawn to a quiet life of yoga. And that doesn't mean that all day, every day, I'm sitting in yoga poses, that I'm oming all day. Although my mantra does have Om in it, and I do practice it twice, sometimes 3 times a day. Barefoot, how are you? talking about yoga, Buddhism, even Christianity a bit. Basically, I'm talking about being of service. And um, there are certain great paths. We could say religions, we could say philosophies, ways. I like ways. It's what I like about Taoism. It's the way. You really can't waver off the way, but it can certainly seem that way. But our steps are always exactly where our steps are. And once you look down and see it, you're here. You've arrived. Every step is an arrival. No place to go. Right here. That's what I like about Taoism. It's the way of the way. Simple. It's like Pavel's, as I was talking about, simple and sinister program. Do this. 2 things. 5 get-ups on each side. 100 one-arm swings total. And you're done. Do a cool down. Warm up with some goblet squats. You got that done in 20 minutes. Taoism. They tell you right from the beginning, this is the way of the Tao. Do this. Buddhism, Eightfold Path. Do this. Christianity, to me, lacks those clear instructions a little bit until you get to the Sermon on the Mount, and then Jesus says, and some people believe those were the only words actually spoken by Jesus in the entire New Testament. Beatitudes, Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says explicitly, do this. This is how to live. This is who's going to inherit the kingdom. This is who's going to go to heaven. This is the one who is practicing the way of Christ. Not just those going to church mouthing words, but the people who are of service to other people. So it's funny. Some yogis have said, if you want to be enlightened, go spend a weekend with your family. That's probably true in a way. Or if you want to test your enlightenment. I remember reading somewhere about a great yogi in the high mountaintops of the Himalayas. And people traveled all over to see them, and they begged him to come down and preach to the people. And his answer was basically, no way. I can't be enlightened and be among those guys. They're freaking crazy. So people will test your patience, but guess what? They're supposed to. That's how you get good at patience, by practicing kindness. You get good at kindness by being kind. Barefoot says Christianity lacks the skin in the game element, deferment and responsibility maybe. I would agree. It doesn't have to be, because again, if you just took everything out of the New Testament except for Sermon on the Mount and said, do this, it leaves nothing out. You are taught how to cherish people. Priest is the gate. Yeah. Because of power. Clinging to the illusion of power. It's not even real power. The funny thing is, they are right there being the gate. They are right there at the cusp of power. They could have it all. They could have the kingdom of heaven, the greatest power of all. The realization of what Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within, and yet what they want is the external power of being able to tell people what to do. And people are willingly to give their power away. Kingdom of heaven is within, clear as day, spoken by Jesus, right in the Bible, right in the New Testament. And yet, we look everywhere for it. It's the story of the Hindu gods and the soul being the seat of power, true power in every humanity. But it wasn't contained within people at the time. It was everywhere, and everyone had access to it. And the gods were a little frantic. What can we do to make it harder for people to find this power and use it? Because then there would be no need for us gods, people would realize that they are the gods amongst gods, no different. And finally, one of the wisest gods said, I know of the one place. We can't hide it in the ocean because they will go to the depths of the ocean one day. We can't hide it in space because they will find a way in space. We can't bury it in the forest because they will graze the forest over looking for it. The one place, the last place they will ever look is inside themselves. That's where the true power of gods lie. And that's where they hid it. And we've looked for it ever since, everywhere but. Although a few people, Jesus and the Tao and Buddhism, they tell you exactly where to look. And of course, we miss the point over and over again. Christians don't like Jesus, though. They like Paul and Jesus interpreters. Very true, which is why, as I mentioned, historically, they say Sermon on the Mount is the only words probably spoken by Jesus. Everything else, as Barefoot pointed out, hearsay. We heard, we think, someone said, Jesus said this. And then it's watered down through time. Not even properly translated. We've talked about this before. The word sin doesn't mean what we think it does. It simply means to miss the mark. An archer sins by missing the bullseye. I used to tell people in training that if your true aim is the target and you go for the bullseye, sometimes you're going to hit the bullseye, but you'll always hit the target as well. So shoot broadly in this specific case. And in this specific case, that means be kind. Who knows who that person is that you're being kind to? Don't pick and choose. We don't get to pick and choose who to be kind to. When we say to be of service, that's being of service. So when I say, for me, a quiet life of yoga seems to be where I'm called right now. Meditate, early morning walks, spending more time in nature. And it doesn't have to be, I'm not talking in the wilderness. I'm talking the small wilderness of my neighborhood where I see deer and I see hawks and I see foxes and there's coyotes lurking about and a bear walked through a couple weeks ago. It's not the deep wilderness, of anywhere special, but it's full of nature as anywhere else. Nature heals. To live a quiet life of yoga means to do all that quiet stuff, but to be of service of other people, to use that quietness that you've built up and have it for a purpose. And the purpose is, now I'm more patient, now I'm more kind, now I'm ready to be of service, even if that service is just a smile to someone who seems like they need it, or to hold the door for someone, or to pick something up if I see someone struggling. Little things. First book I ever wrote, 1999, maybe 2000, and it was inspired from a meditation I had maybe a year earlier. I had just quit drinking, didn't know what to do with my life. I had meditated. When I finished meditating, I asked myself, what am I supposed to do? And I got the clear saying, be a hero. But a specific kind of hero. And a poem came to me, Does God Have a Hero? And I wrote it out, free verse on the yellow legal pad. I wrote around it, things containing it, and took it out and self-published it. Sold in the dozens. But I still like it. One day I'll actually bring it out and read on it. It is available on Amazon. And it comes down to being kind, being of service, living my life in a Christian manner without being a Christian, living my life in a Buddhist manner without being a Buddhist. I would say living my life in a Taoist way without being a Taoist, except we are always in the Tao. If I am anything, I'm a Taoist because I can't escape the way, and I have no desire to escape the way. If I wished for a label, I'd just call myself a yogi, someone who seeks the divine in every moment, someone who practices the divine in every moment. As if I were seeking, it would always be one step ahead of me, one step in front of me. I would never reach it. I'd continuously be a seeker. But when you know it, when you've realized it, and when you know there is no it, you're already there. Pretty simple. That's the Tao. And of course, as we all know, the Tao that can be told is not the true Tao, but it can be lived. It can be expressed because all it is being expressed. So, yogi, Taoist, mystic, it's still all labels. It means absolutely nothing. What matters is action, and not the action you take, the action you are, which is an interesting way of thinking about it. The action you are. In Taoism, they say there is no doer. In non-duality, there is no doer. The Bhagavad Gita says there is no doer. So there's just action. If you say the action taken, that means there was someone there to take the action, but there is no one there. There's just life, just presence. Action for the sake of action, motion for the sake of motion, motion without an ultimate mover. Just moving, just motion. Clouds don't need a reason. Wind doesn't need a reason to push the clouds. The sky doesn't need a reason to hold them. Everything just is. Perfect. Some people don't like hearing that. Well, if life is perfect, why are there children starving in Africa? Not just Africa, that's starving everywhere. But we always use that example. Children in Africa starving, missing the fact that we have school children in New York City who are starving. In every major city, simply because they're overlooked. Is that part of the perfection? By perfection doesn't necessarily mean good. It means things being as they are. It's perfection because it can't be anything other than it is right now. And that includes my desire to end that hunger. That includes my desire to be kind. That includes my desire to feed every single child, including my desire to be a vegan, because by being vegan or plant-based, it means that I am helping to save resources that could feed every single starving child, every single starving person in the country. The amount of land that we use for grain to feed cattle so that a few privileged people, and by few, of course, I mean several million, but it's still few considering the world population. So very few people can eat meat. I'm not saying eating meat is bad. It's not a judgment call. I'm not going to go off on my vegan tangent. But what I'm saying is, if we change the way we eat, we change the way the world eats. Just us. But it takes all of us. Don't have to be vegan. Do a meatless Monday. Eat less meat. Smaller portions. Little things. Being of service. You want to know how to be of service? Eat better. Eat less. Eat right. Again, not a judgment call. I could do better. I do the best that I can. Walk more. Drive less. Save the resources that we have. Extend the resources that we have. Not, traveling is a wonderful thing. It opens up possibilities. It expands the mind. But it also uses a lot of valuable resources. And do we need every single vacation to be far away and full of the things that we do every single year? Pascal, who said that all of man's miseries stems from his inability to sit alone in a room. Maybe our vacation should be learning how to sit alone in a room. saving some resources. Doesn't mean skip vacation every year. Simplify life. Thoreau, his famous message, simplify, simplify, simplify. He wrote that in a letter to Emerson, and Emerson wrote back and said, "Dear David, perhaps one simplified would have sufficed." So even Thoreau could have simplified his simplified by just saying it once. It's all a practice. That's what I love about yoga. It's a practice. You're not expected to be good at it. 30 years of meditation, and I say I practice meditation, and the reason why is I heard, and this was over 30 years ago, I heard the Dalai Lama talking about practicing meditation. Dalai Lama, reincarnation of an endless string of Dalai Lamas, meditated since birth. First instructions, how to meditate. And he says, after all this time, I practice meditation. If the Dalai Lama has to practice, that certainly lets me off the hook. I don't need to be good at it. I just need to do it. And by doing it, there is no me to do it. There's just meditation. I've simplified that. I sit. I think the mantra. Everything happens on its own. I come to my computer screen in the morning, my desktop, sit before the keyboards, and writing happens. It's not me being an author. I don't put on my author cap, my author glasses. I just write. Open the Bible, open the New Testament. Don't read it to become a Christian. Just be a Christian. You don't even need to be a Christian. Be a good person. You don't even need to be a good person. Just be. And your goodness, your innate natural goodness will surface and touch every single person who ever comes in contact with you. And that will spread. That's the Maharishi effect. One person and that ripple, the weird, that web of life. Your one little vibrational act of goodness travels on forever. I used to tell Milka when we first got together, she noticed that I didn't really honk my horn at other cars when I was, giving them a little prompt to go at a green light or whatever. Because as I said, that honk will travel on forever. Some family light years ahead of us are going to be sitting around having a casual conversation, and all of a sudden there's this vibrational honk's going to come out and just screw with their brains, all because I was impatient. I can wait. They're going to go eventually. That's not saying I never use my horn, but I was maybe a little more of a stickler for my yogic procedures back then. I'm a little more lax in some things because I'm open to everything these days. Reminds me, James Brown, not James Brown. I'm drawing a blank. The song These Days. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful song. It'll come to me probably after I turn the camera off. I could look it up, but it's not that important. So let's wrap things up, guys. I've been talking almost 40 minutes. Been trying to sort of not limit myself, but if I feel like I've hit that point where what needs to be covered is covered. Derek, how are you? Good to see you. Didn't see you with the squad yesterday, so I'm assuming you were out on a long hike with your wife. Hope you're having pleasant weather out there. I know it's got to be hot, but I don't think it's Phoenix hot. I have spent a large portion of this talk, religion. Barefoot Burpees and I traded some religious stuff. Let's see. I can't quite pronounce Nelio's videos. Excellent job. Keep the amazing work. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's actually Gregory, right? Thanks for tuning in, Gregory. I appreciate it. Nothing beats a hike, Derek. I had mentioned that earlier. Spending time in nature is the essence of every true spiritual practice. It should be the essence of every religious practice, and there's a difference, a vital difference between a religious practice and a spiritual practice. That doesn't have to be a distinction, but there's an obvious one in going to a church and hearing someone point in the direction of God. Thanks, Gregory. I appreciate hearing that. But you know what? You're someone I follow what you do closely. I appreciate how hard you work. And one of the themes of this conversation has been putting out good vibes. And you're one of those people who puts out the best vibes. So it's easy to remember. Someone like you, someone like Osiris, someone like Barefoot Burpees, someone like Lewis, you guys are easy to remember because of what you do, in different ways, but in essence, it's all the same. It's all that positive vibration that make people feel better, inspires. Yeah, as always, Derek, the talk meanders and goes everywhere. Sometimes it helps me to have Mocha show up, keep me on track. Having someone who, keeps that meandering to a minimum. Gregory says, you're so lucky, no church here. Go to read my Bible at home. Thank you for the compliments. Yes, true. We have great positive guys and an amazing group. I agree 100%. Gregory, I'm not sure. One of the things talked about earlier, churches, religious leaders. I see you get out in nature. I see you do your workout. You're in the greatest church of all. You are what God created. You're there in nature, under the sun, in the forest. There's no greater church than that. We can build the grandest church and the largest temples, but God made the trees, the sand, the mountains, the rocks, all of it. When Jesus needed healed, when he sought wisdom, he went in the desert, he went in the mountains. When Moses needed to hear the word of God, to hear that great voice, I am that I am, he went to the mountaintop. They didn't build a church. Moses didn't need to build a temple on the mountaintop. He went to the burning bush, top of the mountain, given clear instructions. It's what the desert fathers did. They needed to be close to Christ. They went to the desert and they sat and they listened. It's what the Taoists did. And Gregory said, excellent. The forest is my church. 100%, Gregory. Got to go out into nature to feel normal. Being locked in the buildings feels claustrophobic to me. Me as well. I'm fortunate that I live in an area surrounded by nature. I like to call it a small wilderness. Wilderness is in every step. You touch the ground and you are touching wilderness. Doesn't mean that you have to head out to Yellowstone or Yosemite. You don't need grizzly bears to be in wilderness. You need to touch that foot to the ground and feel the dirt beneath your toes. You need to feel earth, the way, the Tao, right here. That's it. Clear instructions. This is what Jesus did. He went in the desert. That's what Moses did. That's what Allah did, or that's what in the Quran. I'm drawing a blank. My mind's just not working. Sorry, guys. All of them. every great prophet and leader went out into the wilderness to receive the word of God. And again, the wilderness is right here. Pretty easy. I often quote Herman Melville, Moby Dick, silence is the only true voice of God. Gregory says, as long as you don't live in Death Valley, I believe it's way too hot there. It's way too hot in a lot of places right now, unfortunately, Gregory. Phoenix, Arizona is hitting 118 several days a week. Muhammad in the cave. Thank you, Barefoot. I kept drawing a blank. My apologies to my Muslim friends. Deep respect. I love Sufism. I've practiced forms of Sufi meditation. 55 and I need to translate that to what it would be temperature here. Or is it the same Fahrenheit? I'm all lost, actually. As soon as we start talking about numbers, I can honestly say that's the reason why 16 Celsius. Okay. That's not too bad. I know many parts of Europe, Italy, people have burned their feet by touching the road. Burn their hands just touching a stone. Just crazy hot all over the world. And it's not getting better. I saw a meme online that said this summer, as hot as it is, might end up being the coolest summer that we have for the rest of our lives. Didn't England have a pretty bad heat wave last year? I'm glad you guys aren't going through it right now. As you mentioned to me before, it's really bad when it happens in England because there isn't most people don't have air conditioning. It's the same people. Yeah, I remember you mentioning that. I don't think I think Paul from Oregon mentioned that he didn't have air conditioning because you live in Oregon, you might have hot days, but hot day is 80. Now a hot day is in the high 90s. Yeah, it's just that most of the world. I saw, not to get political, Ben Shapiro, who's a political talking head, had said it's the privilege of living in a first world country. We get to turn our air conditioning on, turn it up if it gets too hot. Not everyone has that privilege. And that's also not the answer. That just keeps us excluded from the rest of the world. You can't be of service if you exclude yourself, if you shut yourself off. If I have this and you don't, if you suffer, and I refuse to even acknowledge your suffering, taking any sense of responsibility, I'm responsible for your suffering because I'm a human being. Responsibility doesn't mean I'm to blame. It means that I have the ability to respond to your suffering. It's not even a choice. It's what I'm supposed to do. Bedford is saying that, let's see. Oh, I've never even seen it in a house that he remembers. The houses that I lived in Pennsylvania with some family members, we didn't have air conditioning. Always had it in my house in Maryland. As a kid, we seldom used it. We were not often, only when it got really bad, which wasn't too often. And Gregory was saying that 40 degrees Celsius is normal here in Saudi. Well, yeah, Saudi. That's as you mentioned, you're in the desert. Although it's pretty cool, I believe, right? It cools down pretty drastically at night, with the ground not holding heat in the same way it would in a non-arid, non-desert area. 50 degrees Celsius and beyond would be scary hot. Yeah, I believe so. And yet it's a real possibility, growing more so. Hey, Paul, how are you? I just mentioned you. I believe you said you live in a house without air conditioning. Which again is getting harder and harder. But most people don't. Most people around the world, sometimes we forget, how privileged we are just by those little things, by how we get to eat, by the house we get to live in. Even the poorest neighborhoods, you can go someplace where there's air conditioning. You can go into a supermarket and a movie theater or wherever. Just privilege all around that we have, that others don't. Yeah, I guess Burford says London is always hotter. Being in a city like that, the smog, pollution, retaining heat. Yeah, Paul says no, they have a little swamp cooler style. And he says that he's sawing. Concrete jungle, London, New York. Yeah, all of it. I love, one of my favorite sights is when concrete breaks open and nature shows through. The dandelion coming through, some weed coming through. And I don't say weed diversively. A weed is a flower just the same as any other flower, however we decide to classify it. Gregory was saying that in South Africa, his house doesn't have air conditioning, but here in Saudi, every building must have aircon. It is lucky in a way. It's helpful. It's a great tool. I set mine, when I do, fairly high to minimize the impact that it has. Just enough to take that edge off, and then try to turn it off when I can. Maryland gets pretty hot. Later in the week, it's supposed to be 98 degrees here, 98 Fahrenheit. I'm incapable of translating that into Celsius. Literally incapable. My mind just does not hold that capability of translating from Celsius. Now, kilograms into pounds, I'm a little bit better, as long as it's a weight that I've lifted at one time. So I could tell you that a 16 kilogram kettlebell is about 35 to 36 pounds. That a 24 kilogram is about 53 pounds. I could tell you that distance-wise, that a 50K is about 31 miles, and that running a 50K sucks just as much as running 31 miles. It's suffering all the way down, Paul. And Barefoot is saying that, yep, reckon I'd be okay indoors, up to 25 Celsius. Yeah, I don't need it cool in my house. I just need it, when it's in the 90s to be bearable. Take that edge off. That's about all I need to do. All right, guys. So I'm going to wrap things up. Appreciate everyone joining, especially the late part of the conversation. We went, 90 degree Fahrenheit, 98 degree Fahrenheit, so almost 100 degrees. It's human. So you can't even say, well, at least it's not human, because it's human. Yeah, Paul, I've been talking for almost an hour. I actually started wrapping things up at about the 40-minute mark. And then, great conversation starter, the weather. The funny thing is, it actually was a great conversation starter. It's not one of those things where how's the weather? And they say, nice. And everyone goes about their way. It literally sparked an entire great conversation um, about how we live our lives. What can we do? What can we do for other people? Um, I feel bad bailing on you guys. I got my afternoon meditation coming up and my third round of yoga, and then an early dinner. All my dinners early. I try to wrap things up at 4 in the afternoon, and then I fast all the way through the morning. Um, I got morning cardio in a fasted state, but it's just an easy walk, nothing special. Um, well, thanks, Gregory. I really appreciate you being here. Actually, it means quite a bit. Um, and you as well, Derek, and Paul, and Barefoot, and Lewis showed up earlier. It's a fun conversation. You guys definitely help um, push my mind in a different way of expressing itself. What makes sense as I'm saying it doesn't always make sense once it's said. So I get to kind of clarify things just a bit, which is always good. So, if anyone wants to skim through the earlier part of the talk, we touched base on all kinds of stuff: yoga, the Tao, Christianity, all coming back to the simple act of being of service, being kind to others. We talked about burpees, Lewis and I, how burpees prepare you for the shit. When the shit goes down, you're ready for it because you've been doing your burpees. And when the shit goes down, for me, it means being there to help other people in whatever way I possibly can, when I can. And when I say people, I include animals. Animals are people to me. All right, guys. Thanks. I appreciate it. I will talk to you guys tomorrow for burpees and for another live session. Take care.